We ready? Okay. I will call the Board of Commissioners meeting Monday, April 25th. Call us to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I will provide notice that we had an executive session before this meeting where we discussed legal matters. We are going to move to a police presentation on the Center for Resolutions program. Chief, can you join us?
Good evening, Commissioners. We are going to go over one of the avenues that we have at the Radnor Township Police Department through the Center for Resolutions, which is a Delaware County-based group that works on a couple different situations. Commissioner Jones had heard about it and asked that we let the community know what's going on. I would like to stress to the board and our community that there's many other victim-related services. What I like about this is sort of de-escalation for our community, and I'll get right into it, and I'll be brief for your agenda. The mediation services from the Center of Resolutions, this is a unique tool that we use. Let's say we have two neighbors who are having a dispute over a landline, a property line, or a leaf blower being used, or something of those natures. We can bring them out and help mediate a situation. The police can step back after we notify them, and they can work together in a very peaceful, calm, and relaxing manner to hopefully rectify some simple solutions that sometimes are easy and comes from that. And these people who come out are trained and very talented in this. So we have, in the many years, used it even for apartments where people make noise and somebody's upset below. So it has come in handy, and it works out very, very well. They also have a peer mediation program, and this is for elementary and secondary schools. And our schools have many wonderful people involved in them, but this team actually will come in for a large-scale, potential conflict or something. But this is usually run through the school system, and the Center for Resolutions is available for a peer mediation program. And there's a lot of benefits to it, but it's really trying to give children problem solving and decision making so they can make better choices to avoid that particular conflict. Supervised Visitations program, this is something very unique where they put a safe space for families. We know there's many complicated stories with families, and visitation can be very technical and driven by the court with certain restrictions. This group has people who will come in and allow that to happen for the benefit of the family and obviously the benefit of the juvenile. This is sort of our Grand Slam program. That's why it's at the back end of it. This is a youth aid panel. There are other police departments or municipalities in Delaware County that have the youth aid program. To let everybody know specifically, we have it here in Radnor Township. I'm extremely excited about this because it's citizens, volunteers who work with a detective assigned to the youth aid program. They, on their own time, go to the Center for Resolutions to put on a training program, and they come to what we call the YAP, or Youth Aid Panel. This is designed for juveniles in our community, whether they live here or not. The offense has to happen in Radnor, where let's say they're after hours park, underage drinking, or something that's not arrest, not a misdemeanor or above offense. The Youth Aid Panel can be activated as long as they're under 18 years of age, and we have them come in, meet with the panel, work with the family, potentially work with the school or wherever the conflict is, and through communication, special projects and everything, the citation will actually be taken back as long as they meet the requirements chosen by the family, by the Youth Aid Panel, which is all citizen volunteers from Radnor. And we have just had some wonderful situations. In fact, I sent one to the commissioners just to review as a kickoff to this meeting. I do want to stress, if you want to handle the citation on your own, you're not required to go into the youth aid program. It is an option, but I think it's something that is a highlight of our citizens being involved in policing, being involved in the community under the power of the commissioners, and I thank you and Mr. White for allowing us to do this. The Youth Aid Panel is in service. Sometimes it gets a little slow, and then other times it gets busy, and these volunteers, they can't get enough of it, and the families and everybody in the connection we have is very, very good. They also put on some training, which is at the back, and this is going to be available. This was put in one of our chief's reports, a previous one. So they do have some training. If people from the community want to get involved in some of the things that I talked about, they are able to do so, and the Center for Resolutions pays for the training. So if you want to get involved, reach out to us or go direct with them. You could help out in other programs throughout the county, and I think everybody knows there is a need. So I wanted to be brief. I hope I covered it, and I thank Commissioner Jones for bringing that up, and always available to talk about it another time if you like. Is there any questions from the commissioners?
I just have a brief question. Well, first a comment. Thank you so much for the presentation. It definitely had piqued our interest, and glad to learn more about it. Just a general number of how many incidents do you go to the youth aid panels in a given month or year? Just a ballpark?
You know, I would say their average are 2 to 3 if you spread them out. And then sometimes, in all honesty, in the summer when there's more time for freedoms, sometimes we have a higher acuity, up to 5 to 7. If we have a big party where everybody's all at once, in reference to underage or being at a park, we could get 20 like all in the same time. So the workload does get distributed. But I think without those exceptions, Commissioner, 2 to 3 a month is a solid average for us. And sometimes it definitely goes up higher in our summer months.
And do we have enough citizens, volunteers to handle the caseload?
Yes, at this time we do, and then we always keep somebody sort of in the bullpen just in case they got to come out, and we get them the training, so we have one spare in case. There could be a conflict, or maybe they know the family. There's a couple different reasons. We always have a spare, and we rotate it out. Somebody goes on a 2-month well-deserved vacation, so we do have backup at this time. Luckily, our incidents remain low, as you heard those numbers. So there was a debate when we were a little busier in the beginning of having 2 panels in the same township. But, you know, I think the good news is we don't necessarily need that right at this time.
Excellent. Any other questions from other commissioners? Comments?
No, but thank you for highlighting this program. It's when I read about it, anything that we can do to keep our youth from having those, citations under their belts, so to speak, is great, because kids are going to make mistakes, and as long as they're learning how to not repeat those mistakes, programs like this are just so beneficial for that reason. So thank you so much for having.
I agree. Learning is excellent. So, thank you, commissioners.
Thanks, Chief. Moving to public participation. Would anybody like to speak before the meeting? Okay, we'll move to the consent agenda. Is there any public comment on the consent agenda? And are there any items that a commissioner would like to remove from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I will ask for a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
I'll call the vote. All in favor say aye. Passed unanimously. Thank you. Onto our business agenda. Item 3A is the appointment of Seth Rubin, MD, to the Board of Health for an unexpired term ending 12/31/2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any comment from the commissioners on Dr. Rubin? Any public comment? I'll call the vote. All in favor of the appointment of Dr. Seth Rubin to the Board of Health, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, unanimous. Thank you. The appointment of M.J. Fruman to the Planning Commission for an unexpired term ending 12/21/2023. Can I get a motion?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Second.
Are there any comments about the appointment of M.J. Fruman? Any public comment? I'll call the vote. All in favor say aye. Passes unanimously. Item 3C is a hearing regarding the intermunicipal transfer of a liquor license to 226 North Radnor Chester Road, Buena Onda. Solicitor, can you lead us in on this?
Sure. What's in front of the board is a transfer of a liquor license from Chester Township into the into Radnor at a proposed new restaurant, 226 North Radnor Chester Road. The applicant is 3BM1 BO Radnor LLC. This is a procedure that is required under the Pennsylvania Liquor Control Regulations. When a license is being transferred into a municipality, the board is required to have a hearing. Is Attorney Stapleton here? Attorney Stapleton is representing the applicant, and let me just say, for the record, this has been advertised in the March 18th and April 4th editions of the Delco Daily Times for a hearing tonight. So with that, I'll turn it over to counsel for the applicant.
Thank you, John. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is P.J. Stapleton. I am an attorney for the applicant, 3BM1 BO Radnor LLC, and this is a request to transfer a liquor license from Chester City to Radnor Township to go into the space that's now being occupied by Jimmy John's. It's a sandwich shop. It's next, I'm sure everybody's familiar with the area, next to Estia and down the street from Pietro's. 3BM1 Radnor, BO Radnor is a wholly owned subsidiary of 3BM1, which is a company that owns a number of restaurants, all relatively well-known. Jose Garces is one of the owners, the Iron Chef, America's Iron Chef. And this is a concept that Jose developed, and there's one in Philadelphia on Callow Hill Street. It's a fast casual dining opportunity with a very limited menu, tacos primarily, and also a very limited liquor and alcohol menu. They'll be offering to the public sangria, beer, and margaritas. That's it. There's no bar, there's no sit-down bar. It's all you order and someone delivers it to your table. So there's two opportunities to check age verification, one with the purchase of the product, and then again the server will then see who actually is sitting at the table to make sure that that person is of age as well. So it's a relatively small restaurant. I think it seats 32 people. The liquor code requires 30, so it's not a large restaurant. Again, it's the operator's 3BM1, and I've got Scott Campanella tonight to answer any questions you might have. He is the COO of 3BM1 and is familiar with all of the aspects of the business. So we would appreciate your consideration, and obviously answer any questions you may have about the restaurant, about any other aspect of the restaurant. But I think everybody's familiar with the location, so. We have a slideshow, but I think everybody's seen all of the submissions and the location and the parking situation, the ingress and egress. It's all relatively familiar because that strip mall has been there for a while. So with that.
Other than showing us where the location is there more information in the slideshow that would be beneficial for the public watching at home?
Absolutely. If I could just, my tech friend could just pull it up.
Thank you, Ian.
Thanks, Ian.
Just give me 1 second and I'll get
Okay, great, thank you. Scott, why don't you come up, because you might be able to answer some of the questions that I wouldn't. Okay, this is a drawing of the location, obviously, and Estia would be on the far left side, and we would be the pod right next to Estia. I think there's a nail shop next to it.
eyeglass store,
Eyeglass.
to the right, maybe Bosch & Lomb, I think.
Yeah, so you need to speak.
The eyeglass store, pardon me.
Right, and then at the far right would be Pietro's. So obviously ingress and egress from Radnor Chester Road. There's obviously a way to get there from going into the office complex and moving back from the rear end of the rear of the facility. We believe that with the 32 seats in the restaurant, we're within the requirements for parking. I know there was a problem with Estia when I think they tried to expand, but we only have 32 seats. We don't believe parking will be an issue. Obviously, ingress and egress is what it is and has always been that way. So let's see, go to this is just another shot which shows the space, and I think that's an incorrect version because Estia is only one pad in that. It's actually two, so we would be the third one over, correct?
Yes, so I believe that is actually correct.
But again, it shows a better view of the parking facilities and the location of the other businesses in the area. Again, ingress and egress from the North Chester Radnor Road. So that is obviously signage. The one is blocked out. And I'm not sure why that is, but Jimmy John's will be gone. We would go on the signage. We have been limited by the requirements of the property on our signage. We will be completely within the metal area above the door, so we won't have a large sign like Pietro's or Estia. And again, another view of the highways and the roads leading in and out of the property. This is the inside of the restaurant, and Scott, if you could possibly take them through that.
Surely, my pleasure. So the style of service in this case, as PJ had mentioned, you're going to a counter, you're placing your order, and the food's being delivered to your table. It's a fairly quick style of service. And we do have seating. It's a combination of seating, both banquette in the top area, some higher seating. Generally, the location is really built for kind of from families to dates. It's a lower check average. It fits very nicely with Hip City Veg and Honey Grow as kind of sister concepts. And it's modeled off of the location at Callow Hill. It does quite well. And I would maybe I'll preemptively mention that at Callow Hill, alcohol makes up about 15% of the total sales. Not a big alcohol product.
And that number probably will be lower here, but it's a small number compared to many other liquor license applications, only 15%. So that is that's the way the restaurant is laid out. And then finally, here's the menu, and there's one correction to the menu. It doesn't have margaritas on there, but there will be margaritas. So one can have a margarita, but one cannot get a shot of tequila. One cannot get a Bloody Mary. One can get a margarita, a beer, or a sangria. That's the limitation of the menu. So again, fast casual for dine-in and for takeout as well.
I'm sure we have some questions and comments. I'm just going to start with, do you have any intention to apply for outdoor dining?
So as part of the lease arrangement, my understanding is there could be 2 deuce tables placed out front. We would have no desire to go beyond that.
Another issue that I think comes up around any establishment with a liquor license is noise. Is this a venue that hosts music?
No, there's no intention to have amplified or acoustic music. We have ambient music in the background, but that's it.
And we have not applied for an amusement permit.
Any other questions from commissioners? Anna Marie?
My only other question, I'm pretty sure I know the answer to this, but, just want to state it for the record. So is alcohol limited to inside the restaurant only, or will people who are doing takeout, I assume that you have a big takeout business or takeaway business, is alcohol deliverable that way?
So we are limited to the confines of alcohol service for the state of Pennsylvania. Spirits aren't permitted to leave a property. We are not applying for a wine extension permit, which would allow wine to leave the property in limited use. Beer in the state of Pennsylvania could. It's not it's not our desired goal, but it's actually part of what all liquor licenses are in the state. I'm not even sure that we have a material revenue stream with canned beer leaving our other establishments.
Yeah, they're limited to selling, as is every restaurant, 2 6-packs of beer.
Thank you.
But
Commissioner
I just
Boraski?
would make one more point. As you can see from the menu, there's no menu for selling 6-packs of beer, so it's probably unlikely that people are going to want to pay these prices for a 6-pack.
Mr. Dunn? Okay. So, Anna Marie, thank you for asking that question. That was my question. But my other question is, so why transferring from Chester? Was there a location in Chester City that you are no longer?
We're purchasing it from a licensee in Chester who went out of business.
Commissioner Farhi, I saw your light.
Great, thanks. So what are your hours of operation going to be?
So typically the hours are typically 11 to like 8 o'clock at night.
Okay. And I'm just going to caveat, I'm going to bring this up, then I'm going to bring it up again. So as you obviously know, the high school's across the street. We have Giant that sells beer. We have Fleming's and Estia and all these other restaurants within a very, very small area. That's a concern, and I'll end on that too. So the hard alcohol will be mixed with the drink. So you are allowed to serve hard alcohol, but you're just going to mix it prior. So there's no shots. So it's you have a full bar license. You're just not opting to use that. But if you sell the business or the restaurant changes its theme, you do have the right to have a full bar in that restaurant. Am I correct? I mean, the answer is
license,
yes. As I know, the answer is
But
yes.
you would probably have another bite at the apple to talk to them as well.
Sure.
So,
No.
but yeah.
That's fine. I just
Sure.
want that for the record that we have a similar situation in more in your ward. Is it Passerelle Kitchen, where they just sell beer and wine, but they have a full license. So if they ever opted to serve hard alcohol, they are within their rights as it should be.
That's correct, yep.
Okay. So would you be, are you allowed to have a BYOB? Are you allowed to bring in wine outside of that? I don't know if that's legally allowed because you do have, is it an E license or a C license that you have?
This is a regular R license.
That's an R
Yeah,
license,
so
okay.
they would be, they could technically offer a corkage, but most R licensees don't want to do that for economic reasons and for liability reasons as well.
And what is the age for one to serve alcohol? Is that 18? So you can have a server that's 18, correct?
So our servers are tips trained, and my understanding is that to carry alcohol, to carry it from a location where it's made to the guest could be 18 years old.
So it's 18.
To pour the alcohol, you need to be 21.
Okay.
And all of our servers will be, in addition to being tips trained, ramp trained. So that would be required by the PLCB.
Can you explain tips trained and ramps trained?
Tips, you can, go ahead. Yeah.
There's, how should I say? So the state recognizes a level of training to guarantee a certain safety in service. These courses are defined by the state, and we participate in them, both to make sure that our folks are properly trained, but to limit our own liability and the liability of the guests and the community that we're serving the alcohol in.
And I would just say tips is in addition to ramp, okay? So tips, not everybody does tips. You have to pay for tips, right? You're having somebody come in that looks like they're 20 or 21 and seeing whether people serve them. And then you basically reward the people that ask for the IDs, and you fire the ones that don't, right? It's sort of the way it is. But it's another level of training. Most restaurants only have ramp training, but tips is in addition to that.
Okay. And just a few more questions. So if you do like Uber Eats or whatever, the takeout, you cannot deliver alcohol, am I correct? I mean, are you allowed to, you won't do it, or is that just a no-no against
Go ahead.
state law?
So, yeah, third-party services cannot deliver alcohol under that condition, no.
Okay, and that's it. Just, again, there's a lot of schools. There's a big
Sure.
school and an elementary school, and kids walking, just so your servers know. Thanks.
If I can, just for the record, Buena Onda as a concept has been established. It was launched in 2016. The menu of margaritas, sangria, and beer has remained consistent throughout that entire time. We really don't have any, and I understand that it can.
Are they like mixed? Are they like kind of
Yeah,
like
so we do-
Fat
it's a-
Tuesdays where you kind of, you know what I'm talking about?
So we do both. So we have a frozen margarita that we make. It's our own kind of proprietary recipe, and it is on a spinner. So it does come out frozen, and then we actually do a margarita on the rocks, which is a recipe that we have also.
Okay, because I know that at some beer distributors now you could actually do a takeout cup, but you are not allowed to do that.
So some of the laws did go through variations around your ability to take out mixed drinks during the COVID crisis. The state has pulled that back now, and so our license would limit us to what you would have seen pre-COVID, the 2019 and before.
Right. There's no more cocktails to go. That was that COVID bonanza, I guess.
Okay, it's not going to be like Mardi Gras on Bourbon.
Not like New Orleans. no.
All right, okay,
Yeah,
thanks.
No go cups. Yeah.
Most importantly, when do you open?
That's a great question. So we are excited to open. We were hoping to open for Memorial Day. We face the same kind of logistical issues and building issues that everyone else has. But we're working with the township with our permitting process. Right now, we're looking for millworking people. There's always the labor shortages and supply shortages. So we're hoping to actually open for July 4th. That's kind of our new target.
Any other comments from commissioners? Do we have any public comment? I'm going to make a motion to approve.
Sorry,
So
is
moved.
this point of order, is this a roll call vote? Because I know that in the past that some of the, no.
What'll happen, Sean, is the board approves this, I'll prepare a written resolution.
John, turn your
Put
mic
your
on.
mic.
I'll prepare a written resolution if the board approves this with just some of the background and the facts and identifying the property, that kind of thing. But it's not a roll call.
Pardon the interruption.
No worries. Do I get a second? And all in favor say aye. Aye. Passed unanimously. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Really
Have a
look
great
forward to your
night.
opening.
They're going to be good neighbors for you. Trust me.
You're going to see us there a lot. Okay, moving on to discussion and direction on spring tree planting approval and shade tree ordinance update. Spring tree planting memo and ordinance update. Sorry. Ricky?
Yes, Madam President,
Mr. Foster,
thank
I
you.
think this is yours.
Yes, I will take this up. I also have Seth Reeser from the Shade Tree Committee to President. So I'm going to start off, and then he's going to come up and fill in some of the blanks with everything that happened this weekend. It was a huge undertaking, and everything went well, so I heard. The reason why we're here, if I can just break this apart, I know it's a two-part discussion here with the shade tree ordinance, but if we could talk about that after we get done talking about the spring planting, just to go a little bit of direction to handle one thing at a time. The tree planting has been going on for years. This is a process that has been around, and the township has had a big part in those trees being planted, whether it's right-of-ways or within the parks. The reason why we're coming before the Board of Commissioners now is because we want to make sure that everything is done out in the open. With the Shade Tree Committee, we have the meetings, and even though they're public meetings, sometimes people can raise a question into where we plant or what type of plants we plant. So in order to fill a plan and a purpose, we also want the Board of Commissioners to know what we're doing and have a say in it, and just to make sure everything is done the right way. And this is in lieu of what happens with all the other subboards and all the other committees. Whenever a plan is devised, usually the Board of Commissioners has a chance to vet it and make sure everything meets the requirements. So we're not doing anything any different with the Shade Tree Commission. We want them to follow suit with that. So in order for us to do that, that's why we're here now. Just to basically get direction and make sure everything goes according to plan. And from here, Mr. Reeser can talk about what happened this weekend and how the whole plan was flawless.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ricky. Good evening, everyone. Thanks for having me. So we had a great spring planting this weekend. Lisa was in attendance. Thank you. So we're planting 96 trees. The Public Works Department is just about wrapping up with the residential plantings. So 30 of those went to our parks, Clem McCrone, the Willows, and Odoricio. So we had some gracious volunteers from DaVita come out and help us plant over the weekend, along with Lisa. It went very well. PHS had their largest planting this spring, over 1,500 trees in the area, which is fantastic. We have our Arbor Day celebration coming up this Friday. So as Ricky had mentioned, we do a spring planting at least every year. We are going to plan to do a fall planting this fall as well. We've shifted from doing B&B trees, which are ball and burlap trees, to bare root trees at a cost savings at around 10x, so we can plant a lot more trees, but with the gracious volunteerism and our staffing of Public Works. And it is a great way for us as a township and volunteers to get out there and plant these as a community. So the way that the timing worked out for this, obviously the planting of the trees has happened, but moving forward, we'll plan to make sure that we get this in front of you as we can. But all in all, a great success for the spring planting, and we'll look forward to the fall.
And if I could throw on one more point to what Seth had mentioned, it actually was on the agenda for the April 11th meeting, but unfortunately it was canceled. So our plan was definitely to make sure everything comes to you before we actually put the plants in the ground. So, but it didn't work out this way. So that's the only reason why the plants are already there, and now we're here talking about it in the past tense.
Can I just add really quick? So I just want to commend Mr. Reeser and Ms. Brett and the entire Shade Tree Commission, as well as Mr. Foster and the work that the Public Works staff did. It was a phenomenal event on Saturday, and to see so many volunteers out. I did not plant a tree, Seth, so I don't want to take credit for something I didn't do. I was there to support. I thought you guys did a fantastic job. And the one thing that I will say about our shade tree, I've watched the evolution of it. So, you know, when I first came to this board, people thought that shade tree was kind of, they called it like the tree police. And what has happened over the past several years with the, I think the residents that make up the board, their focus on the canopy, preserving the canopy, maintaining the canopy, and reinvigorating the canopy has really, led to a lot of really positive things in our community. And with the partnership with our Public Works staff, who've become so great at planting the trees. I just saw the ones we planted last year in Sawmill, and they look great, the bare root trees. And really finding some creative ways to get us the most trees planted for a really good value. So I really want to commend Shade Tree and Frank Paris and Ginny and everyone who's worked so hard to move this forward. You guys really did a great job, and it was a phenomenal event on Saturday. Congratulations.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Foster, there is a second item to discuss about the hazardous tree ordinance update.
Yes.
Can you walk us through that?
Yes, I would be delighted. This part is a little near and dear to my heart, so it references how the Public Works Director has to get involved with matters between residents on private property when it comes to hazardous trees. So in going out and examining these cases, case after case, it has been very time-consuming. Not only for myself, the arborist, but even some cases that have to be brought before Mr. White, even involving him having to meet with some residents. So in trying to handle these matters, it does take a lot of time and taxpayer money to almost be a mediator between some of these situations. And I will say in the end that the residents, it's been successful, but it's just the time it takes to get there is not always easy. So in talking with the Shade Tree Commission and bringing that to them, they were going over their ordinance. And when it came to that, I won't call out the numbers and where it is in the ordinance, but when we got to that ordinance that pertained to these hazardous trees on private property, we had mentioned some of the language in there didn't fit. I think it was, it wanted you to, or me, to react in about 5 days to get the situation remedied, which wasn't able to happen realistically. We had some trees that were upwards of 5 figures, and it's very hard to tell a resident, unbeknownst to them, that I'm knocking on their door telling them they have to take a tree down and spend, $10,000, and then give them a time limit with which to act with. So, in talking about it with the arborist, Mr. White, Mr. Rice, and the Shade Tree Committee, we came up with new language that would be able to make the situation a little easier, not only on the township, but the residents, their taxpayer dollars that are being used to fund the staff, but also the residents who have these disputes that need to be corrected. So I'll let Mr. Reeser talk about what they came up with, or we came up with, and take it from there.
Sure. Thank you, Ricky. So over the past year, we've been taking a look at the ordinance as a whole to make updates, and we've made the full sweep through the ordinance, a full list of 30 or so recommended changes, but we're pulling out the highest priority issues to move through one at a time. And with this one, as Ricky had mentioned, it's a big burden on the township, but not only that, in canvassing local jurisdictions in Delaware County and surrounding counties, this is a very uncommon guidance to have in place and ordinance to have in place. So the solve for a lot of this has been, rather than canvassing the entire private property of the residents, limiting it to only public safety concerns. So imagine hazardous trees that may be on someone's personal property, but it's near a bus stop or maybe near a street corner or something similar. So we feel as a Shade Tree Commission, along with others, that would be a good path forward. So we bring this to you tonight as a proposal to amend this. We predict and think that the reason why this has become more and more of a issue with more and more residents coming to us has been the COVID effect. Everyone's in their home office looking at their trees in their backyard, and word travels fast, as we know. So it hasn't really become that big of an issue until the past couple of years. So in our eyes, there is still a mechanism for safety and risk. So someone's homeowner insurance, if a neighbor's tree falls on your home, there's homeowner's insurance that would cover something like that. But we feel it doesn't make sense for the township to play a part in someone's trees that are in their backyard, especially with that very short duration of a time frame to react. So you'll see in the agenda, in the packet, the proposed language that we partnered with John Rice on to put together, which gives kind of more of a organic process. There's no rigid timing. Work with the township arborist to come out and evaluate and provide the timing on when it may need to be removed if it is a public safety issue, limiting it to public safety.
Good question. This is probably going to be more of a John Rice question.
Sure.
So I guess the arborist is allowed to go on private property without permission
No.
to inspect a tree.
No.
Let's say he can't get behind, let's say it's on a roadway or it's facing a roadway, but because of bushes or some obstruction, they can't see all the way around it. Or you're saying that they're not
No,
allowed
there's
to
no-
go on
there's-
private property
there's-
to survey the tree completely?
There's no right to get on private property without permission.
Without
I don't know
permission.
that we've ever had a problem with getting on private property or neighbor property. I mean, every property's going to be different, Sean, so I don't think either Steve or Rick or John Hosback, if there's an issue, sometimes it's one resident about another
Sure,
resident.
it's a he said, she said argument, and one resident is going to say, go on their property and to confirm, and if the homeowner says, no, I'm not going to allow that,
Right.
and then the tree falls, and it hurts someone, or there's an issue, then my question is where's that liability?
Private property.
It falls back with the
Yeah.
private property.
It's a private property issue, but we don't have the right, John can't go on the property without permission. So we always get permission. I don't know of any incidents where, we've had some residents not let us on the property to take the tree down. when they find out that that's what we may have to do if it's a safety issue. But then we have to get a court order
So,
to do that.
and it may not be a tree, it could be bamboo, for instance, where you may not be able to see it entirely and you're not allowed to grow bamboo. I'm just making sure that,
I mean, we have a separate ordinance dealing with
sure, you
bamboo
do have,
removal.
you do have a separate ordinance. My question is shade tree or codes or the arborist needs permission to go on private property under any circumstance?
Unless it's something that, I mean, it would have to be an extreme situation for the township.
immediate
We would
danger.
probably have the police department involved if it
Got
was
it.
that
Okay.
extreme, but I don't know that we've ever gotten to the point where that's happened.
Okay.
Are there any other questions from commissioners? I'm not seeing any. I think that having engaged with residents around tree removal and understanding, that's sort of the knock on the door, as you referred to, Mr. Foster, and the price it takes to take down a tree, it can cause a lot of anxiety for our residents. So I really appreciate the proposal as put forward in the packet, that it has a very reasonable approach, collaborative with the resident, providing extension on the time frame that would allow them to have input. And then, to your point, Commissioner Farhi, they worked all the way through what the process could look like, and if a person does not remove the tree or give permission, it would require us to seek a court order. I'm assuming barring anything like seeing a tree almost hitting a house, we would probably bring in emergency services, but barring that. So I appreciate the thoughtfulness put into this. It is an issue that I think we have all encountered in our neighborhood. So thank you for that. If you're seeking direction on what's next, I'm assuming we'll get some language in front of us. Mr. Rice,
Well, I think what's in front of the board tonight is to authorize the drafting of an amendment to the ordinance, and then it'll come back to you for introduction. We'll bounce it around with the shade tree and Rick, and then it'll come back to the board to be introduced and then ultimately adopted.
And go ahead, Maggie.
I guess now my question is, if you have a hazardous tree that is between neighbors and it's going to fall on my house, say, what's the township's role there? I mean, we've basically just taken the township out of interpersonal reactions. But sometimes it's good to have a mediator around. We'll call the police and have their group come and mediate, but
Well, the township's still going to get called, so the township's still going to react to that type of a complaint, and I think we've had some of those. But the township's not going to get a court order to address the situation because the two homeowners can't sort it out among themselves. We're not going to put ourselves, I think that's the goal here, to stay out of the middle of that, because, I mean, we've had a couple of those situations over the last few years, and the homeowners ought to be able to handle it. If the tree falls on someone's house, they all have insurance. We're not going to police those. I mean, we'll get involved. We'll get a call, and Rick will probably respond and tell them the same thing. You need to work it out. But public safety is the main issue with this proposed amendment. Is it going to fall on the street? Is it going to fall on a bus stop? Is it going to fall, near a park? That's not clear now in the ordinance. That's what I think the shade tree is trying to clear up.
Yeah, it's a significant burden on Public Works to play mediator in this situation, so helping eliminate that burden so Rick and his team can focus on more important things. And, as mentioned, this is an abnormal ordinance for us to have to cover all of the private property. It's usually just focused on public safety areas.
Commissioner Myers, could I? Could I chime in? The other part that, I don't know if Mr. White, I see him, he's about to speak too. But the part about this ordinance and the change too that we have to keep in mind is once myself and the arborist go on and assess the tree, we're involved. So if anything was to happen from that point, you know, the township is liable. So if the township stays out of it, even if we just have communication and try to give them direction on how to handle it. But if we go onto property and we give an assessment or evaluation to this tree and say this tree needs to come down, you know, we have an expert do that, being the arborist. The township is now liable, and the residents expect us to follow suit with that. So once we get involved between these two residents, we're kind of in the middle, and it's hard for us to back out.
Yeah, Madam President, the only additional thoughts I was going to add to it are some of the actual circumstances that Mr. Foster has found himself in, along with Mr. Hosbeck. You know, one particular house or dispute between two houses, you had dueling arborists on their opinion of the status of the trees. So that drags it out. Neither side is willing to budge on their arborist's particular position on those trees. As Ricky just pointed out, you know, once the township's involved, as written, you know, we now have a stake in the game. So, you know, it's difficult then to come in and say, no, your arborist is wrong. You got to go with the township. And by the way, now it's a $10,000 expense that you have to move on quickly. The other one is you have neighbors that just clearly do not like each other, and it goes beyond just the tree removal. Now it's the fence that's nearby and the damage to the lawn and the whole process. It's not just about the tree. In the end, the neighbor versus neighbor disputes, as the solicitor pointed out, we're going to get called. We get called every day on these types of matters. This just helps clean up the language to separate the township out of something that is purely a neighbor versus neighbor dispute versus a larger public concern.
Does anybody else have comments? I feel like we are giving you direction to please come back with the language for the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much for everything you do. Okay, on to the, next item is Resolution 2022-48, authorizing payment for the emergency inspection of traffic signal poles to Charles A. Higgins and Sons Incorporated in an amount not to exceed $26,000, and the emergency repair of the traffic signals at Lancaster Avenue and South Ithan Avenue to Charles A. Higgins and Sons Incorporated in the amount of $77,581.40, at Madsen Ford Road and County Line Road to Charles A. Higgins and Sons Incorporated in the amount of $22,504, and at North Wayne Avenue and Poplar Avenue to Armour and Sons Electric Incorporated in the amount of $11,357, all to be paid from the Emergency Contracted Services Fund. That is maybe the longest ordinance title that I've had to speak yet. And Mr. Norsini, is this you?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, Madam President. So the board may remember we had a traffic signal at Lancaster Avenue and South Ithan fall over. Luckily, fortunately, no one was hurt. So the $77,581 was the cost to have that signal removed, have a temporary signal installed, and then subsequently have a new signal installed further back to different standards for size and the type of footing. Once that occurred, I went to the manager, and he concurred that we needed to get all our signal poles inspected. That's what the $26,000 is. They're about 2/3 of the way through. And as part of that inspection, we've determined that the traffic signal at County Line and Madsen Ford, that's the one for $11,357. That work is not done yet, but will be done shortly. That's going to be done by Armour and Sons, the folks who did the signal work in the middle of Wayne. And the other one is at, the County Line in Madsen Ford is Charles Higgin and Sons, our standard contractor. Also, after a visit with PennDOT, the $22,504 price actually became $27,160, which I didn't find out till this afternoon. So there were some requirements PennDOT had us do. Everybody might recall, PennDOT provides all the parameters for signal installation and timing. So we have the study, which is ongoing, for $26,000 of all our signals. We have the $77,000 for the Villanova, if you will, signal at South Lytton and Lancaster Avenue. We have the upcoming Matson, Ford, and County Line one at $27,160, and the Arbor and Sons one at $11,357. That's right next to the safety project, the pedestrian safety project we just did, right at Poplar and North Wayne. So we're requesting the board approve this, and we may be back to you with other signals as the study continues.
I think the first thing we should do is just amend this quickly to include the proper amount. So I am going to move to amend the resolution at the point where it says at Matson Ford Road and County Line Road to Charles A. Higgins and Sons in the amount of $27,160.
Thank you, ma'am.
Can I get a second on that?
Second?
I'll say, do you want to bump that to 30,000 or not? Just to, so we're not going back again, Steve?
No, so based on the meeting with PennDOT, this is the final quote from Higgins.
Okay, I'll call the vote on the amendment to adjust the amount to $27,160. All in favor? Aye. Thank you. And is there any board comment on the proposed legislation?
Steve, could you just give us a little snapshot of exactly what the, I know you had explained it to me, you know, what exactly they're doing in order to do this inspection? So what's happening?
So on each and every signal, there's a visual inspection. We're finding is some of these are buried under dirt. So Higgins and Son is providing a visual inspection of each one. What we have done for 3 signals is we bring in a company that basically does an ultrasound of the anchor bolts that go into the concrete, and they're able to tell us that they're at the correct depth, roughly the proper width. I mean, it's not a panacea, it's not an MRI, but it gives us the comfort level. I had PennDOT there with me, 2 representatives of PennDOT while we were doing that at 3 signals, and they were satisfied. The rest are visual inspections. We had one just come up that they feel the bolts are somewhat rusted. That doesn't necessarily mean, we don't know how deep that rust is, so we will probably do that same process there again and continue. Some were just very evident. Matson, Ford, and County Line Road, there was cracks in the weld of the signal pole. So we knew that that was an easy one. North Wayne at Poplar, it's been hit and it's leaning pretty heavily. So that was another relatively easy one. But as we go forth, I don't know that we'll find more, but we do use whatever means we have.
Thank you.
Thanks. So let's, if I could go back. So the one on Lancaster Avenue, who installed that? And how long ago was it installed?
So we're actually working with PennDOT on that. The estimate was somewhere between 15 and 18 years ago.
Okay, so that was the township that installed it? That was PennDOT, that was Villanova? Who
That
was
we
it?
haven't determined. It would have either been the township or PennDOT as part of the Lancaster Avenue project, but we don't have records on the exact installation.
Okay. What is the lifespan of an average pole?
Commissioner, so we have poles in this township that are 30 years old. We have poles that are 2 years old. I don't have an answer for the lifespan of a pole. The poles I mentioned to you each exhibit different defects. One is a pole with a cracked weld. The one at Villanova is actually, PennDOT took that to send it out for a forensic investigation. That seemed to be an anchor bolt issue, right? They're the bolts that hold it into the concrete. So I don't off the top of my head, I don't have a pole length of life.
Do you know who installed the one on County Line at Matson Ford, same question, and then same question for Poplar? If the answer is you don't know, then,
That is correct, sir. And the one on County Line and Madison Ford, part of the problem is its location to the corner. It gets hit. So one of the reasons this is costing more is we're moving it back further so it's protected. It'll be further back in the yard, which requires a longer mast arm.
yeah, I just want to know if there's liability outside the township of if it's not installed correctly, or if it's a bolt, or, because it just seems like, especially the one on Lancaster Avenue, that's in your midst if you have a bunch of kids crossing.
So that's the purpose of that's the $26,000 to have each of them inspected. That's why we're doing that. Make no mistake, we own, operate, and maintain every traffic signal in the township, regardless of who installed them. They're ours now. And that's the reason for the study, to have somebody go around and look at each
Okay,
and
I'm
every
just
one.
curious if this could be an insurance claim, or there's a greater liability that we shouldn't have to pay for it.
Well, we're going to work through Mr. Tate on the insurance claim for the one on Villanova.
Okay.
I just had a question. Is this a sort of a one-time survey of all the poles, or is it going to be ongoing?
I think we'll talk with one of our consultants and pick let me back up. So now we'll have an idea of every pole. So we may not do every single signal every X years. We might go back next year to 3 that we thought were questionable. But I think it will be something we do, and we'll bid it, or we'll come to the board prior to do every few years of every pole.
Any other comments from commissioners? So I'm now going to move for approval of this resolution as amended. Do I have a second?
Second.
I didn't call for public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak on this? I'll call the vote. All in favor say aye. It is passed unanimously. We are moving on to section 4, which is stormwater. Mr. White, would you like to address us before we get into the separate agenda items?
Yes, please, thank you. Roughly a year ago, the Board of Commissioners approved a stormwater project funding plan. We had spent several meetings, even dating back to 2020, where we started the discussion on the funding plan, went through a couple meetings. Ultimately, last spring, the board approved a plan, and my IT guy's not here, otherwise you'd have a visual. Oh, there he goes, there he goes. It's the Wizard of Oz, he's back there. After August, when we get the new projectors, we'll actually be able to read these numbers. But for tonight, we're showing this more as a reminder of what the plan looked like and some of the high-level features of it. As you can imagine, over the last year, there's been many changes that Bob and Steve can summarize. But from the 30,000-foot view on the plan itself, the board was insistent on a couple different factors. The first of which was we had several major projects in the millions of dollars that were coming to the point of bidding and awarding. So we had to identify a funding source to be able to accomplish those projects. Those were identified in the plan by name. And the amount of borrowing was limited to $15 million at the time. The other element was that in considering any kind of future rate increase, the board was insistent that any rate increase to be considered was going to be multiple years away, and that a significant portion of the roughly $4 million that is in the fund be used to smooth those increases over time. And what is up there now is starting in what was identified last year as year 4, which would have been 2024. So push that back to 2025 now would have been the first scheduled rate increase resulting from this plan. Some of that has changed that Bob will go into detail on. But the concept of holding off those fee increases down the road and using fund balance are still part of the plan. And then the last piece was, proceed with these larger projects. So fast forward to tonight, we, not only just because of the time that has gone by since the last time we talked about this plan, but as you'll see here in a bit, thanks to the efforts, the extraordinary efforts of our engineer, Mr. Norsini, you'll see a much more expanded list of projects, more on the under $500,000 flavor, the ones that we intended to fund with cash from the annual revenues. But in addition, we've also updated the pricing on the larger bonded projects. Thanks to the efforts of Melissa, as we've talked about quite a bit over the last 6 months, we have been very aggressive in applying for a multitude of grants. We've been awarded one. There are I believe four or five others that are applied for. So you'll see what the magnitude of those proceeds would be if we're approved for all of them. And then finally, thanks to the efforts of Bob and our financing team that are here tonight, we had to adjust course a bit in how we approached our financing. If you'll recall, last year we were considering more of a bank loan where we draw down money as the projects are awarded. Again, I don't want to steal anyone's thunder, but that plan, we had to shift course based on market conditions and appetite from the local banks and their willingness to jump into that type of arrangement. But where we're at tonight is that the plan as approved last year, there's a lot of changes in the detail, but the three elements that the board insisted on last year are still intact. We're still in the $15 million range for our large projects. That is still spread out over a number of years. It's still allowing us to push any kind of rate consideration multiple years down the road. We're still utilizing fund balance to help buy time and spread that impact out over multiple years. And most importantly, we have projects on tonight's agenda, or one project in particular, where we're moving forward on flood mitigation projects, which is the ultimate goal of all of this. And we've obviously tackled a lot of infrastructure over the years. There's more on tonight's agenda, but we're shifting at least project-wise to some stormwater mitigation. So, Bob, if you wouldn't mind, we'll swap out what we're looking at from what was approved a year ago to what things look like now, and Bob can just step through some of the very high-level differences.
Thank you, Mr. White. As you can see on this slide, it looks very similar to the last, and I'll expand these to see all the details. Might be a little hard to fit on one screen. This way?
Yeah, no, the opposite of that. There we go.
So last year, there were a total of 12 projects that were identified. 5 were the smaller projects, less than 500,000. 7 of the larger projects that would have been bonded. And in total, it was about just under $17 million. And again, through the efforts of Mr. Norsini, just tremendous work in identifying in much greater detail a total of 24 projects, 12 of which are listed here are the ones to be paid from cash and budgeted at $500,000 or less, and 12 of the larger projects that we expect to be bonded with your approval tonight. And those projects, the bonded projects went from $15 million up to a total of $20 million of bonded projects. So the list is expanded. Things have been laid out in a manner such that timing-wise, the projected increases, as mentioned, are still as what was presented last year, just pushed out 1 year further, which would be $2 per year beginning in 2026. And to do this, the initial round of financing would be with your approval tonight to issue bonds in the amount of $10 million, and then expecting somewhere out in 2026 a second round of financing, right now projected at $4 million. Of course, that would change with a lot of different factors, but right now at $4 million, we can accomplish all the projects. And over here, we have listed the various grant programs that have been applied for. The $480,000 has been awarded. The other 4 grant opportunities, we will hear later this year if we will be awarded. So those numbers help contribute a lot to the overall financing of the plan. And coupled with that, there will be more grant opportunities in subsequent years. So this will be kind of a living document. We'll update this model over time based on those awards and based on project estimates. As you can see down here, the significant, and on your agenda tonight, these couple of these bonded projects, South Wayne and the Mayland Road Culvert. And with that, our concern is always, is our cash position year over year. And with the goal being to use the cash that's in the fund, not only for the bonded project, for the projects less than $500,000, but also to provide for some design services year over year. Over the next 10 years, we'll still maintain a cash balance just under $1.3 million. And this also allows for us to cover future debt service projected at about $732,000 a year on the second round of financing. I'm sorry, that would be the total of the existing plus the additional $4 million borrowing. So the model shows that with some very nominal increases, these projects that have been detailed out here, and over time as these are put out for design, put out to bid, they're awarded, constructed, our cash proceeds of a $10 million borrowing now and a future borrowing estimated at $4 million, along with some nominal increases and some grant opportunities, we can take a significant bite out of these stormwater projects, 24 in total right now in front of you.
Yeah, and then just to button it up and move forward with the agenda, the projects that are listed are all projects that at one point or other have involved some discussion either in the full board level with approval to design or with individual commissioners as projects have come up and Steve has worked on designing and moving forward with them. Those tend to be the smaller ones. These projects were all summarized in a project summary that Steve had prepared about 2 weeks ago. We will put the final touches on that update, the project update, as well as this updated funding plan and publish that. What we wanted to do tonight is before the board considers just shy of $7.2 million worth of projects was to reassure the board and the public that the funding plan exists, and it's I would say it's in even a better place this year versus where we were last year, now that we've added a significant amount of grant component to it, and a little bit more specificity on our project updates. And so with a healthy fund balance, a reliable revenue stream, and the daily work that Steve, Bob, and Melissa are putting into the plan, it's exciting to see it move forward. So happy to answer any questions on the funding plan or move forward with the rest of the agenda, which includes various components of this.
do we have questions from the board? Jake, why don't you go, then you, Sean.
All right, thanks. Hey, Bill, for the grant that we received, is it tied to a specific project?
I'm going to let Mr. Tate answer that one.
Are you the one?
Yes, Commissioner, the grant that we've received is tied to the West Wayne Preserve project, as well as two of the other grants we're waiting on are also tied to West Wayne, and the other two are tied to the South Wayne project. Over here, you can see it a little better. This is for West Wayne, and these two over here are for South Wayne.
Now, because we received the grant for West Wayne Preserve, does that speed up the process with the state?
Unfortunately, Commissioner, no. So DEP has its own, its own method for reviewing the project, the grant. Regardless of where the grant came from, that doesn't change the review process from DEP.
And where do we stand with DEP on West Wayne Preserve?
I believe, I anticipate hopefully being able to go out to bid later this year. We're still months away from getting our approvals.
Okay, all right, thank you.
I'll start with one question, then I'll lead somewhere else. So how many projects are there in total, Steve?
There's 24, Mr.
Okay.
Tate had noted.
And I guess Ward 7, Meyer doesn't have any stormwater issues?
I will say, Commissioner, from all the wards, I can't recall actually any actual flooding issue other than under the Conestoga Road Bridge.
That was my next.
Which
why
is,
that not on there?
So two things. A lot of time that's just, and I'm not going to say all the time, but a lot of that is the fact that there's inlets on the low side that get clogged. Our guys go out, they do a fantastic job in these storms, and they go out, and if you'll notice, as soon as they clean them, they open. But during the storm, it keeps getting filled. So that hasn't come up as a flood project. If we tried to move forward on that, I would actually prefer and advise and recommend that we contact PennDOT for their bridge or SEPTA's overpass and their street, and that should be a state-funded project, but it seems like it's more of an infrastructure project.
Okay. So that's my thank you. That's my first question. My
Commissioner, could I just, a couple things to add to that is, with regard, so first and most importantly, this plan, like any other funding plan, is a snapshot of where we stand today. That's why Bob mentioned there are a number of multitudes that might change what this looks like down the road. If there are additional projects, which there will be, we know we're doing a feasibility study in another area of town. If something comes out of, Ward 7 or down by the Conestoga Tunnel and that generates a project, those things can be worked into this plan down the road. That's why the $4 million in a couple years could be a little bit higher based on those additional projects. The other thing too is,
but hold on, I'm sorry to interrupt, but not any of this 10 million could be used for that, correct?
no, the 10 million that's on tonight's agenda is earmarked for the projects that are listed
Okay,
in the
'cause
first 2 or 3 years
Because
of
it
this
becomes
plan.
like a Fenimore Woods thing, where if it's earmarked for something, it's pretty much got to stay there, correct?
Yeah, I mean, short of the commissioners deciding that project's no longer feasible, which is the case.
So out of this 10 million, nothing is earmarked for Ward 7, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
the projects that are identified in the near term are all projects that Steve has been working on for 4 to 5 years.
Sure.
And they're just now to the point where we've designed, or completing design. In the case of the South Wayne parking lot, we've actually bid and are ready to award. The other element to this is that you'll notice that with a lot of the flood reduction projects, we're limited to our footprint or where we can work. That's why the South Wayne parking lot was ideal, because we own it. We can dig it up, we can put infrastructure under it. What we run into, and we did this, there was a section in North Wayne where we were considering expanding, or this isn't engineering terms, so Steve, forgive me, but just, making the stream bank wider to accept more water. But what we had to do in order to be for that project to move forward is to take land or have the residents agree to give part of their land for that project. And we ran into a buzzsaw. Folks were just not interested. So when it comes to flood mitigation, we're limited to areas that we control to really have a lot of to have projects that we could do quickly, or infrastructure. So the culverts, the bridges, we own those, and that's why you see a lot of those projects on there too. So when we start getting into areas that we don't own and control, these projects are hard to pull together.
So my next question, this is going to go back, I guess, probably to Bob Tate here. So are we going to deplete, there's what, 4 or 5 million currently right now in stormwater? And in the fee, what's in that fee basket? Approximately how much? 5 million?
Cash,
It doesn't have to be exact. Just-
cash balance is just over 4 million,
Okay.
and the current fee structure generates just over $1 million a year.
Okay. And are we going to draw that down or deplete it, or just keep that and then issue the bond on top of it? So we have 4 or 5 million in cash, and then we're going to issue a $10 million bond. So we're going to have 15 million out. 10 million is going to be earmarked for this, and 5 million is just going to be for other projects. So this is kind of my concern, or looking at it this way. It's the taxpayers that are going to have to pay the shortfall, because one is fee-based, as you know, and one is tax-based. So there are nonprofits out there that don't pay taxes. They don't pay property taxes. So the difference, or the difference, I guess you would have to say, is going to be paid for by the taxpayer. So why not increase the stormwater fee and take the burden off the taxpayer? I would say I don't mind if I paid $30 more per whatever square foot it is in stormwater, knowing that nonprofit institutions are going to have to pay that as well, and my property tax value, or my property taxes, go down. So do you understand what I'm saying, Bill?
Yeah, and
so-
I don't want to interrupt,
But so let me just
Okay.
finish. So I think that helps the taxpayer, the person that owns property in Radnor, much more so than someone having a fee where you can't, in theory, write off. And you'd have to examine, that may be something for Carfax to take a look at, but it's a property tax versus fee issue when it comes down to where that sweet spot is. I know that you understand what I'm saying here.
Well,
You may be able to explain it a little bit, to refine my comments a little bit more.
So a couple of things. First and most importantly is that this funding plan is going to be financed and paid for entirely by the ratepayers, not the taxpayers. So there is no intention now or at any point during this funding model to have any tax dollars needed to help balance this out. The concept of holding off the rate increases and spending down fund balance, that goes back to our conversations last year about the concerns, very reasonable concerns of the township carrying $4+ million in a fund and then also asking people to pay more. So that was a balancing act of needed rate increases down the road, but at the same time utilizing some of that fund balance to, again, spread that out and soften the burden. So at no point, so again, the ratepayers, those that pay the stormwater fee, are funding this model. It is not a taxpayer issue.
The taxpayers aren't going to have to chip in, or the general fund isn't going to chip in any shortfall. Am I correct on that?
That is the intention of the plan, correct.
That's the intention, but with rising commodity prices, with rising labor prices, if 10 million isn't enough, that shortfall would have to be, you'd have to use the general fund for any shortfall, which would
Well,
be
yeah, I
taxpayer
qualify
based.
that only from the perspective of this board. You can't bind some future board into rate increases. This is a funding plan. Ultimately, in 2026, if this thing plays out exactly as predicted, in 2026, the commissioners then will have a decision of raising the fee by $2. That's why I say it's planned that way. If we don't do that, the current revenue structure won't be sufficient to pay these expenses, and some other source of revenue will be needed. But in an ideal world, this is why the stormwater fee was created. It was meant to be funded by the ratepayers, separate of the tax issue. And that's, again, that's the goal of this plan.
So I don't really have any questions. I just want to thank you, Mr. White and Mr. Tate, for taking all the things that we talked about, and Mr. Norsini, so long ago, and the things that, the considerations we wanted to make. Mr. White, you're absolutely right. If we go back and ask the board that implemented the stormwater fee, this is exactly what it was meant for. It was meant not to fully fund projects because it doesn't generate enough to fund big projects, but it certainly generates enough to pay the interest on the bonds that can do the big projects. So I have to say I am ecstatic with this. So we've been talking about some of these projects for 5 years since I first got on the board. I'm thrilled with the South Wayne flood reduction project. It's not my ward, but Mr. Norsini and I talked about that. Remember when we went and toured the library right before the library opened, and we were talking about the parking lot, and I fell and I almost broke my leg in the parking lot because it was such a mess. And you said, oh, we're going to fix it up. And we talked about a stormwater project. And so that was so long ago. And it is just so exciting to see these start to come to fruition. Some of these that are really going to impact the severe flooding issues that we have in the township. And then as we move forward through that list, some of them are infrastructure, some of them really are. So a road won't collapse, Malin Road won't collapse into the creek, which it's about to do. But some of them really will make a significant difference, I think, for the people in the areas like Walnut Avenue and then certainly South Wayne, and then as we move forward through the list. So I just want to commend you all. This was definitely a team effort, and you really listened, I think, to us as a board, to what we wanted and how we wanted to move forward in a responsible way for the community. So kudos to you all, and thank you very much.
So, Mr. White, do you need anything from us on this, or can I move on to the ordinance itself?
Yeah, no, that was just, that was kind of to tee up what's remaining on the agenda. So I think if there's no more questions on this specifically, we can move to the legislative pieces. Thank you.
Excellent. So that takes us to ordinance 2022-05 and an introduction. General obligation bonds not to exceed 10 million, bank qualified for stormwater infrastructure improvement projects.
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
Is there any comment? Any further comment? Any public comment? I will call the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Thank you. Resolution 2022-53, engaging bond counsel for Series 2022 general obligation bonds. Can I get a motion?
Moved.
And a second?
Second.
Is there any comment from the commissioners? Any public comment? All in favor say aye. Aye. Nay. And Commissioner Abel's off the dais. I will move to Resolution 2022-54, engaging PFM as independent disclosure and pricing agent for Series 2022 general obligation bonds. Do I hear a motion?
Well, can we have, I mean, you're not asking for public comment, you're not asking for
I just
commissioner
did.
comment
I
on
did.
all this, or not?
I did, on everyone.
Okay, all right,
So can I get a motion?
my
on
apologies.
2022-54.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Is there any commissioner comment?
Yeah, I just have one comment. Is that a conflict of interest? So are they're not underwriting and selling? And, Bill, are they underwriting, selling, and advertising as well as, surveying you understand.
Yeah.
We've had that in the past where we wanted to look at selling the sewer, and it was the same team that was gonna give us the report as well as then try to sell it out. I just want to make sure that that's not the case.
Yeah, so just, Dan can answer any very specific questions, but, this model was established 5, 6, 7 years ago, a while back, where, where the township has worked with Benning and Scattergood to underwrite the bonds, whether they're new issuances or refundings. Cozen has represented the township from the bond counsel perspective, and then PFM represents the township in a pricing agent role. They work very closely with Benning on pricing day and in modeling these to make sure that the township is getting the very best rates that the market has to offer. So when it's time to sell the bonds, PFM is representing us, so to speak, at the
Sure,
table.
but I mean, the market determines the
Not that
price.
Benning and Scattergood
Sure, the
are
market
not.
determines, you just underwrite it. It's just your fee. The market will determine the price of the bond.
PFM is an independent municipal advisor. Benning is the underwriter. So PFM, we do not purchase bonds. We have no conflict of interest. Our sole fiduciary duty is to the township, to the issuer. We represent the issuer in the negotiation with the underwriter, which is Benning.
All right, and this is a $10 million liability the township is going to be taking on. Is that going to affect our credit rating, ability to gather money? What is the target rate that you really want, or what is like the prime, quote unquote, prime rate? Are we going to be above it, at it? We're probably not going to be below it. How does that affect our credit rating, ability to grab money? Are we in a position that if we need more money, we're obviously an A-rated
Double A1.
township, but I just want to make sure that the more that we go to the well, and then how is the township, how long are these bonds, and then do we have a sinking fund, all that other stuff?
Commissioner, I can address. These are 30-year bonds. The amount of borrowing is driven by a formula. It's a capacity of debt to an average revenue calculation. The township currently has capacity to borrow in excess of $50 million. So the $10 million borrowing, which is, we're at the bank qualified level, which is preferable, will not hurt, or let me say this, the amount of the borrowing is not a significant factor in our credit rating. There are other economic and financial factors that Moody's will evaluate in assigning a credit rating to this issue. We have been, and we're currently a AA1 rated township, and we don't see anything at this point that we expect that to change, but we'll know more in the next couple of weeks when we have our call with Moody's. PFM's role will be to ensure that on the day of the sale that the township is getting the best price and the best rates, the best yield on the various maturities that will go out up for sale on that particular day. And they work closely with Benning to ensure that happens.
Are they callable if rates go down? Because they're on their way up. If they happen to slide back down, is there a call, can we call them
As
in?
bank qualified issuance will be callable within 5 years.
So we have a 5, so it's callable anytime after 5 years?
That's
correct.
At any time, we can refinance?
Correct.
Any other comments from commissioners? Is there public comment? I will call the vote. All in favor say aye. Aye. Nay. Okay, it passes. We are moving on to Resolution 2022-46, authorizing the award of construction contract B22001 for the Malin Road Culvert Replacement Project to GMB Construction Group Incorporated, and allowances for a contingency and construction inspection and services in the total amount of $1,385,732.79 to be funded through the Stormwater Fund borrowing plan. Mr. Norsini, I'm going to ask you to start your night talking about all these great projects with us.
Thank you, Commissioner, and this is a great project because, as Commissioner Borowski had noted, the road has been, and still is settling over these rusted out pipes that are under there. So this is going to be a good project from the standpoint of safety for the road. It is an infrastructure project that needs to be done, and the price is around where we thought it would be, which is unusual for some of our projects, and it does include the contingency and inspection and construction services. So we respectfully request the Board of Commissioners award this project to GMB Construction Group.
Is there any comment from commissioners? Question?
Yeah,
Sorry.
why is this
can
not
we
in the
make
bond?
Let me step back. Make a motion to approve,
So moved.
and a second?
Second.
Second.
Thank you. Any comments from
Yeah,
commissioners?
why is this not in the bond? I mean, it's a $1.4 million project. I mean, I don't know.
No, this is a project that we'll be paying with the bond proceeds. That's
The borrowing plan.
the borrowing plan,
That's
yeah.
what this
The
is.
borrowing
This is-
plan versus the next one you'll see is cash balances. So that's how we differentiated them
So
in the
this
titles.
is in the bond?
Yeah, this will be funded with the bond
So
proceeds.
why wasn't this, everything in that bond had to be voted separately at one time or another?
Yeah.
Or why wasn't, okay,
Yeah.
so that's all been voted a long time ago, and it's just been backlogging, okay.
Well, yeah, any project has various votes. Usually there's a vote by the board to engage an engineering firm to do the design. Once we have that, then there's a vote from the board to authorize us to go out to bid. Then we receive those bids, and ultimately it comes back to the board again for award of the bid. So what you're looking at here tonight with this project is awarding the bid. So this is the final step, and now it's on to construction.
Can I just ask a quick question? So, Mr. Nacine, I know this is one that had to be coordinated. Doesn't this have to be coordinated with PICO because of the natural gas that
That's-
runs through there?
Correct, Commissioner. So the idea was to get the design and the coordination with PICO done. They won't shut down a gas main during the winter months for obvious reasons. So the idea was to get this project done during the small window they gave us to do so, because there is going to be a utility relocation.
Are we coordinating at all with Newtown Township on this? Because Malin is half in
I
us,
have-
half in there.
I have been in touch with Newtown Township. I made them aware that this project will be before the board, and they were aware, I let them know long ago that we were working on this. So I told them, if, pending board approval that it's awarded, once we meet with the contractor, we'll make sure that Newtown is fully informed of the, how long it's going to be out and the detour. And we'll have signs that go up, the typical signs that say this road will be closed from this time to this time.
And that leads me to my next question. How long do you anticipate the project taking?
So the project duration is 5 to 6 months. That's what we give them. That doesn't mean that's how long it's going to take. What we're running up against now is the concrete precast, which is the culvert, right? The long lead items. I don't anticipate it taking that long. We have to get this back on before winter weather. So that's the full contract duration. I am hoping it doesn't take that long.
Do you know how long will the natural gas have to be shut down through there? The entire duration of the project, or?
No, just specific times when the culvert's going in.
Okay. Okay, if this is approved tonight, can we have a meeting with the residents over there, just to let everybody know? Because the other thing that everyone's going to be concerned about is certainly traffic detours and things like that.
Absolutely. And what I might request is, once the contractor provides his bonds and insurance and we get the notice to proceed, that's when he or she is officially allowed to start. That would be the best time. We can have schedule and detours and all that good stuff.
Great, thank you very much.
Can I ask just to follow up to the gas? If you turn the gas off, you're going to need PICO to go in there and light every pilot light. Whose responsibility is that?
So
to relight
PICO
the-
handles all this, Commissioner.
So
Really doesn't
they'll
involve
go in
us.
and light pilot lights in basements and hot water heaters and under stoves and
So
wherever.
PICO works
essentially.
out the back feed of like how how people are fed while this gas main is out of commission. And we've been talking to them for well over a year and a half. So I don't know those specifics, but my assumption is it's all PICO. They're fully aware of what they are and aren't allowed to do and what they need to do for our residents.
Sure, I just worry that if someone is away, if it's over the summer and they're away and they turn the gas off and then they turn it on and they happen to have an old school pilot, their house is going to fill up with gas.
I would leave answers to that and to PICO, and I can try to find them, but
Okay,
I don't have those types of
it could create
specifics.
a terrible
Yeah,
issue.
I mean,
Thanks.
PICO does this all the time, so.
Okay.
Steve, how many, do you know how many homes are actually impacted by?
I do not, Commissioner, but I will find that out.
That'd be great, thank you.
Any other comments from commissioners? Is there public comment? I'll call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. The Resolution 2022-47, authorizing the award of the contract for design, engineering, permitting, habitat survey, and construction service for the repairs to the Hunt Road Bridge project to Gannett Fleming Incorporated in the amount of $102,700 to be funded from the Stormwater Fund cash balances. Mr. Norsini.
Thank you, Madam President. So, brief history, one of the fire companies had asked us what the load rating of this bridge was. So to determine that, we had to hire one of our consultants to go through the PennDOT process. And actually, the bridge has been posted at a specific rate. In reviewing those documents from Gannett Fleming, became evident that there's work that needed to be done to this bridge. It's a timber bridge with a steel understructure. So moving forward, wanted to get ahead of this before it was in totally bad shape. It's fine to use at the weight limit that's posted, but it needs repair. And part of this work is for DEP permitting, design documents, bidding documents from Gannett Fleming, who did the original survey a few months back, in the amount of $102,700 that we respectfully request the board award this contract to Gannett so we can get that design process started.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thanks. I have one question for you, Mr. Norsini. In the materials provided, you indicate that there's also a Phase 1 bog turtle habitat survey as a part of this project. Can you speak to that?
So what we're always required to do a wetland survey, and none of the consultants ever include what occurs if we're required to do a bog turtle survey. So I requested they have a line item in there. If there's evidence that a bog turtle may exist and we have to do the study, instead of going back to the manager or to the board, there is a line item for that work. If it doesn't occur, we don't pay it.
Thank you. Any other comments from commissioners?
So this is a super selfish question because my parents live on Hunt Road. How long do you anticipate this taking? Because that is like a major detour for people when that bridge is out.
So as part of this design, when they come up with that design, then we'll get an estimated time of the closure. So I won't have that for a few months. If I could, as soon as I know, I will let you know, Commissioner.
Can you just let my dad know? No, just kidding.
Gladly let Mr. Borowski know, or Mr. whomever.
Any other comments from commissioners? Is there public comment? I'll call the vote. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Passed unanimously. Resolution 2022-50, authorizing the award of the contract for design, engineering, permitting, and construction services for the stormwater management project at the Cowan Park parking lot to Gannett Fleming Incorporated in the amount of $69,940 to be funded from the Stormwater Fund cash balances. Mr. Norsini.
Thank you, Madam President. And so this project is a standalone project in North Wayne, and it actually serves a couple purposes. So my intent here, the scope of work I gave Gannett Fleming was to use that parking lot to capture the 10-year, 1-hour event that falls on the parking lot, right? So this isn't a regional project where all these pipes, this is to address the impervious within that project, within that parking lot. Also, there's a lot of extra impervious we don't need there, so we would shrink that. We wouldn't reduce this parking spaces, but we would shrink it. I plan on having some type of vegetated buffer, porous paving, and it would, so it's going to do twofold. The parking lot is in absolutely horrendous shape. I mean, it actually makes South Wayne look pretty good, I think. And so the one benefit of the stormwater management project is that this parking lot gets redone for all the folks that live down there and patrons of the park. This is solely a design project at this point. It's a design request. So we're respectfully requesting the Board of Commissioners award the design of the Cowan Park parking lot to Gannett Fleming in the amount of $69,940.
Do I hear a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Is there any comment from commissioners?
I have a few. So I'm for anything that's going to repave that parking lot because it's beyond a disaster. How many spots are there currently there? Do you know offhand? Give or take?
Let me pull up the plan.
And then my next question is that parking lot can get pretty full pretty quickly. So the removal of spots, I know that Radnor Wayne uses it for Little League. There's an accompanying park that parents will take their children to. So if it's a nice day on a Saturday, you're going to run out of spots. I'm just curious what it is now and what you're planning on shrinking.
So there is no plan to shrink it. There's about 16 spaces there right now. Where we may lose a space is that we're going to be required, and we should, meet ADA requirements. So there's a specific formula based on the number of spaces, how many ADA spots we're going to have. We will definitely have to have at least one, maybe two.
Okay.
So there's no intent to change the number of spaces, but inherently that will occur by meeting the ADA parking requirements.
Okay. And this is probably not toward you, but as they repave, any kind of sign, and I don't know if there's great signage, but maybe a crosswalk there as well.
So
That
that's
could
actually
help.
part of the project. So there'll be a crosswalk that takes you from the Cowan Park parking lot to Cowan Park with ADA ramps, and there'll be the crosswalk that takes you further up Radnor Street Road. So that's all part of this, as well as, depending on its condition and the grades, new sidewalk along Township property for the, so
Okay.
that corner will get redone and should look much, much nicer when we're
Okay.
done.
And then I know that parking is tight in, what is it, Little Chicago, that area, very similar to Garrett Hill. And I know that residents park there after hours or sometimes at night. Is that going to still be the case as well?
I don't see any I am unaware of any intention to change its use. This is just to make it better for the community from a stormwater management standpoint, and aesthetically, it will be better too.
Okay, is there any way to increase parking with new, is there area that could be utilized if you're gonna go in there and dig it up and?
No, I don't see, we will look at it, I don't anticipate any increase based on the fact that it's a rectangle. You know, there's no room to expand. I don't think anybody wants to see us go to smaller width spaces at the, you know, so you may gain one space.
Okay.
But you're gonna have a lot more door dings.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other comments from commissioners? Is there public comment?
Hello, I'm Doug McCown. I live on Poplar Avenue. Have you given thought to collecting some of the water that comes off of Radnor Street Road up where Poplar Avenue runs into it and including that in that? Or is that way out of the bounds? Just as a matter of interest.
So, actually, our staff engineer, Ben Wagner, is working on a project. It was actually presented to the Board of Commissioners at a previous meeting where his design will capture some of that runoff, but it will take it into existing storm sewer into the creek. This was just to manage the parking lot itself.
I will call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Opposed, that was unanimous. Thank you. Next one is Resolution 2022-51, authorizing the award of the contract for design, engineering, permitting, habitat survey, and construction services for the Walnut Avenue Culvert Replacement Project to Gannett Fleming Incorporated in the amount of $213,600 to be funded from the Stormwater Fund cash balances. Mr. Norsini.
Thank you, Commissioner. So, the board may recall, we did a culvert study after the hurricane. It was the red light, green light, yellow light, basically very high level. It's good, it needs work, it's in really bad shape. So what we found out as part of that study was that this one culvert on Walnut Lane is in very poor shape and needs replacement. The permitting, and then, Commissioner Abel spoke to this before, the permitting for these projects is somewhat long. So we're requesting that this award be given to Gannett Fleming to design and permit the work needed to do to replace. This is not a repair project, this is a replacement project. This Walnut Lane culvert, and it's anticipated that's at a minimum a 9-month time span.
Is that 9 months for the project or before it begins?
For the design, until we come back to this board for a request to go to bid.
Can I get a motion to authorize?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Is there commissioner comment?
Yeah, I have a question. So this is, I know that a lot of houses flood on Walnut. This will help stop that flooding or not?
This is a replacement. This is not a stormwater management, this is an infrastructure project.
It's an infrastructure. Okay, because I just want to, if houses are built in a floodplain, then that onus should fall on the homeowner at that point. And I believe because that was a natatorium back there at one time?
So I'm not sure what you're asking, Commissioner, about the specific. So the natatorium was down further by the previous project we
Yes.
noted.
Mm-hmm.
This is up on Walnut Lane. It's higher.
Okay, so this is just a straight infrastructure?
This is a township-owned culvert that is in very bad shape that needs to be replaced.
Okay. Thanks.
Any other comments from commissioners? Is there public comment? Call the vote. All in favor, say aye. Pass unanimously. Thank you. Resolution 2022-55, authorizing the award of construction contract B22-002 for the South Wayne Flood Reduction Project to N. Abenizio Contractors Incorporated to include contingency and construction inspection and services in the total amount of $5,403,240 to to be funded from the Stormwater Fund borrowing plan. Mr. Norsini.
So Commissioners, I can't tell you how excited and happy I am to present this project to the manager, to the board. As Mr. White had noted, this is one of the type projects that the Stormwater Fund was created. I was involved with the very beginning of all the meetings on how that fund was created, and stormwater management was the biggest bucket. And this has been in design for a long period of time. This is in an area that floods in front of the Radnor Fire Company, as well as down at Runnymede by the middle school. So I do want to stress this is a flood reduction project, so it is not going to stop all flooding on South Wayne, but it will, and again, Melior Design, who designed this and has done other work in the township, has told us on several occasions that it's the 10-year, 1-hour event, roughly 2 inches of rain in an hour. That is the most frequent damaging storm we get. That's what this is to take. So this is going to utilize unused capacity in the Radnor Middle School field that's been sitting vacant for many years, as well as a very large system under the South Wayne lot. And in the end, the South Wayne lot will be paved. It will have grass islands. It will have plantings that when I went to the Shade Tree Commission, they actually gave that task to Matt Golis, who's chair of our Planning Commission. So those plants are from him. Mr. White has directed me to evaluate if we can go solar lighting in there to go net zero on that, which we can do via, that's not a problem from a change standpoint. So it's very exciting after these years to come to this board with a stormwater management project, a flood reduction project, where it's not a pipe project, it's not a culvert. This is, you know, something that's going to affect, and this is the Ithan Creek watershed, where we're currently doing a feasibility study. So folks ask, like, what's the plan? Well, aside from what all that hard work Mr. Tate did, the plan is watershed-based solutions. So right now we have a Darby Creek watershed-based solution in what Mr. Abel had noted about that project at the West Wayne Preserve. This is our first one in Ithan Creek watershed, followed by the feasibility study, where Mr. White had also noted that North Wayne, that plan has changed. So we'll be going back to the drawing board again on a Gulf Creek watershed-based project. So this is our first truly large stormwater management project. I am thrilled to bring it to the board and the manager, and respectfully request the award be made tonight.
Thank you. Can I get a motion to approve?
So moved.
And a second.
Second.
And can I get comment from commissioners? I will start by saying I am so excited for this. This is, I've not been on the board the whole time that this has been under consideration, but I have been a resident during that whole time, and really excited that we are at this stage. So congratulations. I don't want to jinx it, but feeling good for you, Steve. Does anybody else want to have a comment?
I second that. This is part of my ward, and I can't tell you how nice it's going to be to know that we potentially won't have any more cars floating down, you know, the Ave. And no, thank you, Steve. All joking aside, thank you.
Steve,
So,
I'm sorry, were you done?
Commissioner Borowski, are you?
So I was just going to say, Steve, could you just say one more time that this is going to connect up under the middle school field? Because the fact that that is going to happen is finally realizing, I think, thousands, maybe millions of dollars that were spent when the middle school was built to put that system under there, and then years and years of being told that we could not connect up to that in any way, shape, or form. So this was something that used to come forward all the time when I was on school board. Could you just say it one more time?
Yes, ma'am. So we will be connecting West Wayne Avenue, part of North Wayne Avenue, storm sewer infrastructure, connecting to existing storm sewer pipes and into the middle school system to fully utilize that storage space, which tonight's probably the right night to say it is like money in the bank, right? We bought storage space that was unused. Now we're going to use it.
That's absolutely amazing and incredible. Thank you, Steve. I am so excited for this project, so I hope you'll have a big groundbreaking and we can all come.
That's what the manager has instructed us to do.
Excellent. Commissioner Myers, do you have something?
Yeah, hi, Steve. Just the typical two questions. If this goes through tonight, when would it start and how long will it take?
So, again, I hate to repeat it, but as we're all experiencing and we all see, supply chain issues are real. It's not just supply chain, it's just how busy every precaster, all these suppliers are very busy, so there's long lead times. In speaking with the contractor very unofficially, as far as when this project can complete it, realistically, it would be November, barring any problems. Understanding that this is Wayne, and it's 100 years old, and there's all sorts of things we don't know underground, but that would be the goal.
And when would it start?
So, in speaking with Melissa Kahn, who wears many hats for the township, tomorrow she would issue the notice of intent to award, right? That's telling the contractor, the board, hopefully, awards this project. It usually takes several weeks to get their bonds. There's performance bonds, payment bonds, their insurance certs. So that takes about 3 weeks. So again, in speaking with this contractor, it will be a couple of months till it physically starts due to getting that material. Whatever material comes in, if it works within the sequence, they will start.
And then, do you know the sequencing for this? Is it going to start at that parking lot? Is it going to start at the fire station first?
So
Or
most
how do
likely
you
it would
decide?
be concurrent work, Commissioner. So we are replacing what most people feel is the sidewalk as they walk by the fire station, but it's actually their concrete apron. We worked with the fire company, that it's a very specific sequence of when they wanted it done. It's in like 4 pieces. But the intent is, even though they are two somewhat separate timelines, we anticipate concurrent work, and whatever material they can get first, if that's the parking lot, we want them to dig that big hole and get that started. If they get the material for the street, we want them to get the pipe in the ground.
Commissioner Farhi?
So I didn't hear, in the best case scenario, what's the time frame you're looking at?
November, Commissioner.
No. How long will the project last? If you can get everything and no hiccups, supply chain, a year, 6 months?
November of this year. That's what we're anticipating.
No. But how long? A week? How long does it take? 6 months? It's a 6-month project?
Yeah. I mean, we anticipate being complete by November, so.
So it would
Of
start.
this year.
So it would start now, tomorrow, or when would it start?
As I noted, so they're going to get notice to proceed. We have to do all our approvals. Realistically, it won't, depending how quickly the material comes, it probably won't start for about a month or two, a couple months.
So if it starts in June, so it'd be July, August, September, October, November. Okay, so 5 months. So in that 5 months, and that would be good that if you could have all that construction not being done when school's in session, I think that's important. A, for noise, B, for buses, and for everything else. Am I correct on that, or it could be noisy?
No, there will be work during this, when the school's in session in September and October. I mean, there will be that work occurring.
Okay, and you're not going to have to dig up the middle school? You're not going to have to dig up the
No.
the field?
Now, there's a connection point that we're going to use to get into that field.
Okay. Have you contacted the Radnor Fire Company? Will this affect times? How much will it affect times? It will affect times. Is it going to be minimal, 2 minutes, 5 minutes? What are we looking on a best case, but also on a worst case scenario if you need to get a fire truck out there or an ambulance or And-
So
and-
we had several meetings with Radnor Middle School, with, the Radnor Township School District, as well as the fire company, to get their input. They don't tell us what their response time changes are, but I would remind everybody that Pico and Aqua went through this road 2 separate times, and I think all was handled well by the middle school and the fire company. Our fire company's fantastic. These people know their business, so.
Sure. So the whole road won't be, so it would just be one lane would be closed? Or
No,
will
there'll
it
be
the
at
whole-
times where the whole road will be closed, but everybody's fully aware that, the fire company has to operate. We will let them know if they've got to turn right versus left or whatever. They'll be fully aware of our schedule.
Okay, and school buses, obviously, as well?
Yeah, we work with the transportation department of the school district. That's no problem.
And then Supuzio Gym, I know that there's a lot of flooding and water issues there that will help
Two
alleviate
different
some of
issues.
that.
So we have street flooding here,
Uh-huh.
right? We have a lot of street flooding. Sulpizio Gym is its own animal as far as its flooding. It has groundwater issues as well as some runoff issues, but this project is not designed to address that. It's designed to address the heavy ponding in South Wayne.
Correct, but the groundwater issues, if there's less groundwater, there's less.
I don't anticipate this project affecting Sulpizio one way or the other.
Okay, and that, all right, that's what I have for now.
Oh, I thought you were looking for another question. Okay. Then I am going to ask if there's any public comment. Not seeing any. I'm going to call the vote. All in favor of awarding, authorizing this award, please say aye.
Aye.
Congratulations, Mr. Norsini.
This is great for our residents. We're very, very, very happy to get rolling on this.
Really looking forward to it. Thank you for all your hard work getting us here. I will now move to reports of board liaisons. Is there anyone who has a report from a committee or commission?
Yeah, the library, so Radnor Memorial Library wants to thank Molly Gallagher for posting about their new app. And it's not just for Radnor Memorial Library, it's for the Delaware County libraries. And with the Delco Reads app, patrons can search the catalog, place holds, manage their record, access databases, and utilize self-checkout in participating locations. So download the app and if you're a library user, and yeah, it's fantastic. I've already used it.
Thank you. Others? Maggie?
No, I was just going to say, so I did talk about the shade tree and their work over the weekend, and I just want to reiterate they did a fantastic job, and they are also working diligently on the ordinance, so that what we heard tonight, there will be some more things coming forward for improvements, I think, to the shade tree ordinance. So, yeah, that's it.
Maggie?
So the Board of Health thoroughly supported the ordinance that we put through at the last meeting, and are really going to kind of pivot and concentrate on the educational side of it, with a plan with the liaison to the school district. Even though these substances seem to, right now, be in an older population, things tend to trickle down as far as substances and substance abuse. So there'll be an educational push coming.
Excellent. Let's see, moving on to old business.
Yeah, I have just,
Oh, did I skip new business? Sorry. I will back up and start with new business. Do I hear any new business from the commissioner?
So I just want to thank Ricky Foster and the Public Works teams. There were 2 creek cleanups this weekend. Marilee Johnston hosted one over on the Brook Road Trail. And she had a bunch of high school students that came out and residents. So they cleaned up, I think they got like 20-some bags of trash and tires and a bunch of stuff. And then there was another one that I worked with the Conservancy on that was at Skunk Hollow, and we pulled out a bunch of stuff down there. And our Public Works team came and picked up all the trash, and we are so grateful for their help and support. So, and congratulations to the group that did such a great job over on the Brook Farm Road Trail. I think that's what it's called. So, yeah, and thanks to everyone that came out to help with the Skunk Hollow cleanup as well.
No other new business? Old business, Commissioner Farhi.
Yeah, and Bill, I know that we spoke about this earlier today, so everyone knows you're not blindsided. Where are we with the outdoor dining Where are we with the outdoor dining waiver requirement? Because it was October, and it's like 6 months later, and are we anywhere closer with that?
Yeah,
Kind of update.
I'll hand it
Yeah.
off to the solicitor, please.
Yeah, Sean, you're right. In the fall, what was proposed, I think, by Commissioner Larkin was an ordinance. He had drafted something that would permit rooftop and/or outdoor dining with some waiver procedure coming to the Board of Commissioners. Kevin and I have been back and forth on this. I mean, I have a draft ordinance which I last really worked on in February with Kevin. And the challenge is, and I think we're talking about pre-existing restaurants, not new restaurants, being able to do one or the other or both, and having that come to the board for some kind of review process. The only way that can come to the board is really through like a conditional use procedure, because you're dealing with zoning ordinance provisions and you're dealing with setbacks. That ordinance was still tied into the setback requirements in the existing Wayne Business Overlay. So I've got a couple ideas on how to do it, but I need to finalize it and circulate it to the board and see if the board wants to advance this. I think the outdoor dining is still approved through the end of this year.
Again, it's going to be a chicken or the egg. Obviously, specifically, not fixated on the Wayne business, specifically on Garrett Hill, and I think that each business district is its own animal and should be. The Wayne business district is different than Garrett Hill or where Yang Ming and the Wawa is in Moira's district.
But the proposal, when it started, was throughout the township. Wayne Business Overlay
Sure.
has their own specific, but the rest of the township, where there were restaurants, it was to provide
Sure.
for either rooftop or outdoor.
Sure, but my concern is that, again, it's the same concern. I don't want to beat the dead horse that, yes, you can extend it in an emergency fashion for 2 years, but business owners need something more concrete when it comes to making improvements and accommodations for the long term. Because they're not going to do something for a 2-year and then something happens where it's not approved and now they're grandfathered out. So to me, if you've had it since February, and I'm sure that you're very busy, I know that, now we're looking at May. Really, you could say October to February to May. So are you going to be able to get something at least?
Yeah, I mean, what I'd like to do is, because I had some conversation with Commissioner Larkin since this was introduced in terms of the mechanism, because again, Sean, the challenge is this board can't just waive zoning ordinance requirements, and that was the initial proposal. So the challenge is to give some flexibility for people that have existing facilities that want to do outdoor dining or rooftop to come in front of this board, and it's got to be in a conditional use setting. It's the only way it'll work. So that's what I'm trying to make clear in here. This would be like an accessory use to an existing restaurant operation. The initial draft
Sure.
talked about rooftop, and if you couldn't feasibly do that, you could do outdoor, or you could do both. So I'm trying to focus it so it's clear. I'll circulate something to the board. I'll say, give me like 30 days.
I've watched this drag on, John, and you obviously can see my frustration. I'm not at the point where I'm comfortable waiting 30 days, because now it's May. Again, these businesses that operate outdoors in the summer want something concrete, want to have a business plan, and 30 days, it's just, I'm going to tell you that I am, I'm frustrated, John. I am, and I'm not saying that, I don't think that it's your fault. It's just, you know, from what I hear. So, and as far as it being a special exception, really a waiver for rooftop dining, it should stand on its own merits. So the two, it shouldn't be that you get a waiver.
There was an ordinance that stood on its own merits, and it didn't advance. So this is something that...
Then I'll have to, that's a Garrett Hill overlay issue. So that's the zoning issue that would have to get changed.
Right.
If I recall, during our discussion about the ordinance that you're referring to, the rooftop with a mechanism that would allow people who can't afford or facilitate rooftop would have the option for requesting outdoor, we had also discussed that going into the comprehensive planning process would allow us to look much more you know, look at an enterprise view of the entire township, and I was hoping to have this as a focus of that process as well. So that is all that. So I guess my point is that I don't think that this has been stalled. I think that we've been moving another heavy lift that would add to this important issue as well.
So I would disagree with that in the sense of a comprehensive plan is years down the road. You're looking at
Right,
that.
which
well,
is
let me-
why
let
in the
me- I'm sorry,
meantime,
let
we
me-
left 2 years of outdoor dining so that we would be able to prepare ourselves
So
to have the
when does
larger
he,
look.
but again, that doesn't help a business owner that is trying to stay competitive when we're having new bars and new restaurants, like the restaurant tonight, who said they're only going to have 2 tables outside. But at least they can accommodate those tables and buy, and they know that they're going to have that. There's no guarantee that there's going to be outdoor dining anywhere else. And you're correct, specifically in Garrett Hill. Has it stalled? It has. You may say not, but you're right, it failed. And then John hasn't said that he's worked on it since February, and now we're here in May. And, you know, and emergency exceptions are not how business owners, small business owners, want to plan out their business. So, and in the meantime, Garrett Hill, and without having a dedicated plan, is going to fall further and further behind to Lower Merion, to other townships and other entities. So I would like to see something. I don't want to wait 2 years for an unknown. That's not fair.
It's not going to be 2 years, but it's also, if it's coming to this board, it's got to be by conditional use, which means you're going to have a hearing, and someone's going to bring in an application. It's just not going to be a use permitted by right in order to do what was proposed.
Well, then it's going to be exactly like a stormwater waiver. Is going to be every exception, and it is, John. I mean, it's, well, can you do outdoor dining? I don't think that outdoor dining, and a lot of the residents that live in Garrett Hill don't want rooftop dining. Pardon me, they don't want, not outdoor, they don't want rooftop dining. That's not in fashion with the Garrett Hill neighborhood. But they may want outdoor dining if they can get 2 or 3 parking spots, as an exception, and they shouldn't have to wait with, $5 really cheap plastic furniture until they figure out what's going on. Meanwhile, other businesses are being able to plan and being able to design and create a suitable long-term structure for their outdoor dining. That's all I'm saying. So I do believe that it has failed, or not failed, that it has stalled, and I would just like to see this pick up and not have to say, oh, well, we'll deal with it in 2 years.
Well, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that it's,
Well, I'm hearing conditional use, and I'm hearing,
Well, it's
I'm
go-
hearing an emergency
It's-
exception, and
it's going to have to be a conditional use. It's going to have to be to have the flexibility to deal with Garrett Hill and other properties that are small, and there's a setback requirement, and that's always been the issue with Garrett Hill. Sean, you know that. There's a setback requirement which was proposed under the last amendment to be reduced solely for Garrett Hill, and that ordinance didn't advance. So there's got to be some, it's not going to be a black and white situation. It's going to have to come to the board, which my understanding, if the board wants to give me a different direction, is that's what was proposed. So the board would have the final say on outdoor dining, setbacks, how many seats, those types of things, which are zoning concepts. You can't just wave a wand and say, you can do whatever you want to do. There's got to be some process. So that's what I'm
that's why
trying
I'm
to.
waiting for you, and you're
that's-
saying that the last time you looked at it was February, now we're going on May.
So we're now going in circles, so I appreciate the conversation was
But
raised in
I'm
old
gonna advance
business.
it.
I also appreciate that I'm hearing that it will be coming before the board in a reasonable amount of time, and we'll have
So
further
30 days,
conversation.
that's good. Thanks, John.
I am now going to ask for a motion to adjourn. Oh, sorry. Is there any public comment? Thank you, Doug.
My name's Doug McCone. I wanted to show something. If I can put a flash drive in here, see if it'll read.
Can we get Ian to help you?
Oh, I can put it in. I just can't make it.
Something for the overhead? There he is.
Well, file. What's this? Oh, what's on the flash drive? Is it on? Doesn't see the flash drive. It's reading that. It's reading now. No, the second one. That one. That's
Do you
fine.
want all these pictures?
Well, yes. Well, I was gonna go through them, but yeah. Just pick one, and I can just, of course. Can we turn it side the other way? Yeah. Okay. This is a nice, light thing to end on, sort of, hopefully. What we have here is,
Doug, can I ask you just to pause for 1 second?
Oh,
You have it, we don't. There we go. All right. Thank you.
these are kids walking down a street to an Easter egg hunt. This Easter egg hunt is in Fenimore Woods, which, oh crap, let's see, let's go this way. All right, how's that work? Of course. I'm sorry. But, yeah. You can see the Easter eggs down by the thing. You can do the same thing here if you look carefully. The pictures that matter are these. These are all the kids that are shown up here. Ah. And all these families are coming down enjoying this space. And this is actually, there are actually Easter eggs there, if you can see them. And here they're all going out with mom and dad, little kids. I like this one particularly. Okay. Yeah, well, this girl was very sweet to do this for us. This is, my point here was, this is Easter egg hunt, it's great fun, but this is also the reason we want to make sure that we don't take this kind of stuff away when we renovate Fenimore Woods. We want to make sure that this kind of stuff, activity is still capable of being done, because this is, I took my children to it, and my baby's now 24 years old, so it's been around a long time. That's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that. It was great to see those photographs. It looks like it was a lovely day. Now, I believe I will ask for a motion to adjourn in a
So
second.
moved. Oh.
And all in favor? Thank you.